Let me begin with a question. So, is there anyone in your life, like, do you have a friend who, when you first met them, you sort of didn't like them? Like, now, if they're in the room, don't don't point them out. But we've all had that instance, right, where you meet someone and at first you don't really know them that well, and their traits and their quirks are a little weird. You find them maybe annoying, maybe you find them rude, or whatever. But as you get to know them more, you find out there's more to their story, and they actually become a good friend. And to be honest, there's probably people in your life who have thought the same thing about you. And see, that's sort of what we're talking about in this series. Because the reality is, there are some topics that we possibly all had some impressions of or opinions about. And the way we see things are slightly off, or they're twisted, or maybe they're just plain wrong. And there's more that we need to understand. There's more to the story. You see, there are topics that you expect to talk about in church, right? Topics like prayer, love, the Bible. That makes sense, right? And then there are things that you don't expect for us to talk about at church. Like, you don't expect us to talk about the NFL, or Harry Styles, or streaming content on Twitch, or how to get more TikTok followers. And you see, today we're going to spend some time talking about Harry Styles. Just kidding, we're not. But we are going to be talking about a topic that you don't expect to talk about in church. Okay, are you ready? That topic is pornography. On a scale of 1 to 10, how awkward is it to talk about porn in church? How would you define porn? Maybe you're surprised I just said that. Or maybe you just rolled your eyes because straight up you're thinking, like, really? It's not that big of a deal. Or maybe you're acting disgusted right now because you're in a church setting and you're like, that's the response I'm supposed to have. But whether or not you think it's a problem, here are a few things you should know. Depending on what kind of music you listen to, you hear references to things that are somewhat pornographic on a pretty consistent basis. Like, it doesn't seem like a big deal when artists like Cardi B rap about it, right? Or when a comedian jokes about it. Why is it such a big deal then when I talk about it? Or if you watch TV, or if you watch movies, or Hulu, Netflix, whatever it is, you've possibly seen things that could be labeled as porn. Just because it wasn't X-rated on your phone doesn't mean that it didn't have undertones of porn or pornographic imagery. And I'm not saying that to make you feel guilty. I'm just trying to make a point that this topic isn't as foreign and far away as you might think. You see, the average age of exposure to porn is 11 years old. 11 years old. So we're talking about something that is already affecting people around you. By no means am I assuming that all of you have had encounters with porn. I'm just making a point that it is a preteen thing, that it is a teenage thing. It's an adult thing. Okay? This affects everyone on the planet who has access to the internet. And if something affects everyone on the planet, we feel it's okay and maybe even necessary to talk about it. So real quick, what are some ways porn has shown up in other parts of culture? What are the messages being communicated in movies, in music, in TV shows, and TikTok that reflect porn culture? If you're new to church and you're a little shocked that we're talking about this, I get it. Trust me, I do. You see, I know this topic isn't easy, but here's something that I would love for all of you to get today, okay? We're not just affected by porn, we're actually influenced by the culture of porn. And here's what I mean by that. This is not something that could potentially tempt some of us. This is not something that just affects some of us. This is something that influences all of us. Why? Because porn culture is all around us. It's in Snapchat, there's sexting, there's movies, there's music, there's advertisements, conversations, apps. It's everywhere. Plus, listen to this. The porn industry generates $12 billion a year. That's more than the combined annual revenues of ABC, of NBC, and CBS. Like literally, it's all around us all the time. And it's impossible to spend time around something and not be affected by it. You see, when it comes down to it, porn is sexualized content designed to get a specific response. That's what it is. You see, a lot of people watch porn because they're curious. So it's kind of like sex education for them. And the problem is that porn was never designed to educate. You see, it was designed to hook and make you addicted. It was designed to manipulate you. And we're being influenced by something that's teaching us a fake education. I just said that everyone is affected by porn culture. Do you think that's true? Why or why not? And what's interesting is that you and I are usually really quick to be able to see through things that are fake, right? That when things aren't legit, we notice it, we recognize it right away. So, for example, how many of you love McDonald's? I promise there's no shame. I love McDonald's too. Maybe if you don't love McDonald's, maybe let's say, I don't know, Carl's Jr. or Sonic or Burger King, whatever. Like, what is it that you like? Now, let's say that a McDonald's manager came here and wanted to talk to you about healthy eating. And like she or he starts talking about eating things like Big Macs and French fries and milkshakes. Like none of you are gonna fall for it, right? Like you'd see right through it. You'd be like, why are we allowing this person to teach us about healthy nutrition? Like we can see right through that. And you see, going to porn is like going to McDonald's to eat healthy. Like it would have adverse effects. Going to porn for sex or for sex education is the same. It has adverse effects and can actually end up hurting you. And the truth is that there's more to the story, and that's what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. You see, there's a book in the Bible called Proverbs. And the Bible's actually a collection of books, and there's this first half that we call the Old Testament, and it's everything that happened before Jesus came. And then we have the New Testament, which talks about Jesus' life and what happened after he left. Okay, now the book of Proverbs sits in the Old Testament, and it's actually a book of poetry. It's primarily focused on wisdom, which means truths that make your life better. And these proverbs were written by an ancient king named Solomon, who was famously known as being an extremely wise person. But what does an ancient king have to say that would be relevant to our lives now? Some of it may be confusing, but a lot of it actually makes sense in the lives of teenagers and adults alike. For example, the verse we're going to look at today says this. This is Proverbs chapter 14, verse 15. The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. Simple is basically naive. For example, a simple person believes everything they read online. They think every science experiment works just like they see it on TikTok. They fall for any prank because they're easily tricked. They're extremely gullible. They believe anything. And when it comes to porn, maybe you've heard or thought statements like, well, it's not hurting anyone. Or there's worse things I could be doing, and I'm not doing anything. I just looked. At least I'm not actually having sex with a real person. And you see, we've been naive when it comes to porn. We believed everything, but hear this. Porn never tells the whole story. It doesn't. There's a website called Fight the New Drug. And you see, they've compiled decades of studies from respected institutions about pornography. And their website has assembled over 1,000 pornography-related articles. And you see, here are some of the researched facts that they discovered. They discovered that, studies have found that porn use is correlated with intimacy problems. They've found that, frequent exposure to pornography is associated with believing it's possible to have high sexual satisfaction without having affection for one's partner. Essentially, you just use somebody. They've found that frequent exposure to pornography is associated with the belief that marriage is sexually confining and that having children and having family is a bad idea. Studies have found that even moderate porn use is correlated with damage to parts of the brain involved with motivation and decision making. Like, the list goes on. I don't have time to cover all of these, but the list goes on. You see, porn doesn't tell you facts like this when you look at it. It wants you to be distracted. It wants you to be addicted. It doesn't want you to have a full and complete life. You see, consider this. Porn will not make you better at sex. It might actually make you worse because it damages your relationships. Porn will not make sex better for you. It will actually make it less desirable because it doesn't give you realistic expectations of sex. You see, porn will not help you understand what sex is like. It will actually confuse you and lead you further away from understanding it. And here's the thing, God isn't against porn because he thinks that the act of sex is bad. He's anti-porn because pornography has twisted what he intended sex to be. He is anti-porn because it devalues people he cares about, which is everyone. You see, God is anti-porn because it's bad for you and bad for others. God is a 100% loving God, and there is absolutely nothing loving about pornography. You see, the second part of the verse says this: the prudent give thoughts to their steps. This means that a person evaluates information carefully so that they don't fall into a trap. And that's exactly what porn is. It's a trap. It's a trap that wants something from you. It wants your time, it wants your attention, it wants your money, it wants you to be addicted to it. And in exchange, it gives you a false sense of sexual closeness. You see, culture doesn't tell you that because they don't see it themselves. A prudent person is basically someone who's wise. And many, many years after Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament, a man named Paul wrote a letter that became part of the New Testament. He wrote to a group of people that he loved and cared about a lot. And he said this: "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise." Take a moment in your group and read Ephesians 5:12 again. What does it look like to be wise living in a culture influenced by porn culture? When Paul says, be very careful, it's very similar to Solomon saying, give thought to your steps. Don't believe everything you hear. You see, porn never tells the whole story. When you're being manipulated, step the other way. Be prudent, be wise, get yourself away from something that is so destructive. Were any of the facts that I talked about surprising to you? How might learning about sex by watching porn hurt your future sex life? If someone is a follower of Jesus, why does it matter whether they're affected by porn? It would be crazy for someone to teach us about being healthy from a menu at a fast food restaurant, right? We would see right through it. We need to have the same mentality when it comes to porn in our culture. You see, there are a lot of steps we could all take, but for the sake of today, we're going to simply focus on two. The first, refuse to be fooled. You see, you need to train your brain. When you see the ad or the Snapchat, argue with it, question it. What is this trying to sell me or convince me to do? You see, all of you are adults. You're young adults, but you're adults, and you're smart. You see through so many things that are fake or manipulative. You have to access those same smarts when it comes to porn culture. Remember, it's everywhere. It wants something from you. It doesn't care about you or want the best for you. It wants to trap you. So be wise, be smart, and be careful. And the second thing, refuse to participate. Create a plan to set yourself up for success before you even reach the trap. Think ahead. What will you do when you come across pornographic content or are tempted to believe the lies about porn culture? How will you put a stop to the manipulation? Sometimes it isn't enough to know you're being tricked. You need help to get unmanipulated. Maybe you need to take concrete actions and put some restrictions around your access to technology. If an industry makes $12 billion a year, you can believe that it's very persuasive and convincing. Remember, it's a trap. And it's not possible to get out of every trap by yourself. Talk to a trusted adult. Talk to your community group leader. Let them know what's going on. It may be that you have some things that you need to confess, that you need to get off your shoulders. It may be that you need to ask somebody for some accountability, to check in with you from time to time. You see, we need each other to help fight against this industry. So as a group, brainstorm some practical ways a person could refuse to be fooled by the messages porn sends, refuse to participate in porn content, and refuse to face their struggle with porn alone. None of us want to be a part of something that manipulates us. We don't want to associate with something that hurts us and hurts others. We're smart and we don't want to be controlled. But porn culture is sneaky. And now that we've named that, we can open our eyes, see it for what it is, and step the other way. And imagine if we did. How liberating would it be to move forward without being trapped by something that's so destructive to so many people? We would hurt ourselves and others less, and that is a big deal. Porn never tells the whole story. On the other hand, we have a God who loves us immensely, and out of his love for us, wants good things for us. He wants to see us thrive, not suffer. And porn is hurting and damaging, and God wants better for us. He has given us incredible minds to see through the lies and incredible wills to be able to walk away. So choose wisdom. Be proactive. Be willing to have hard conversations. This is worth the fight. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us this week. I know that these conversations are hard to have. I do. But I want to encourage you. Your community group leader is here for you. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to think less of you. If there's something that you need to talk about, something that is on your heart that's weighing heavy, I want to encourage you to open up and be willing to be transparent. Because the reality is you are not alone. If you do struggle with porn, you're not alone. There are so many other people who are trapped and who porn has dug into them and it's not letting go. And we don't want you to be trapped. We want to help you be free, because in Christ there's freedom. So please be willing to open up about that. And also, I'm here for you. Your community group leader is here for you. If you need to have a one-on-one, we're totally willing to do that. So thank you for being honest. Thank you for being open. I want to encourage you to make sure you pray with your group. Definitely be praying for your oikos. If you need a new oikos card, talk to your leader, okay? We'll see you next week.